Today's guest is none other than Tim Draper, Silicon Valley legend, billionaire venture capitalist, and one of the earliest believers in Bitcoin. In this episode, we dive into Tim's bold predictions for crypto, the future of tech, which countries he believes holds the most opportunity, and the surprising reasons why businesses fail that nobody talks about. He shares his life philosophies, lessons from his father, and why trust is the ultimate key to success. Plus, Tim reveals his bucket list, including walking on the moon and freeing some unexpected names from prison. This conversation is packed with wisdom, surprises, and actionable insights. I really hope you enjoy this just as much as I did. It's a surreal moment to see you on my screen. You know, we obviously spent a lovely time in 2016 together with the VCX when you showed me all about Silicon Valley. And then I remember seeing you at your book launch in 2018, and you very kindly signed a copy.
Good for you for remembering those two events. That's terrific.
Well, Tim, you've had more of an impact on my personal and professional life than you would ever imagine. You and your family sort of combined. So I've got a lot of gratitude for that.
Well, terrific. Well, good. I'm glad to hear it.
How are you, and how's your family?
Everybody's doing very well. We had a great Thanksgiving. We had 24 people around the table. It was a huge kids, hitting my feet under the table and running around and throwing toys at each other. And it was perfect Thanksgiving. It was great fun.
Beautiful. And your father, Bill?
He was there. He had a great time. He's doing very well. He's 96 now and seems to be very happy all the time. So that's great.
That's great. I mean, he really is a remarkable person, and talk about him a little bit more in a minute. But I'll never forget the talk that he gave during the week that I spent with you. It was really very remarkable. He's a remarkable human.
What did he do? What did he say? Do you remember any of it? I kind of like hearing his words of wisdom.
Do you know what it is, Tim? And I was going to talk about this in a minute, but I came to learn about venture capital and business and investing and everything, but I never imagined you in your book and your father, the amount of life lessons and philosophy and how to think about things and how to do things and how to go about things. It was almost as much as the business stuff. And he was just inspiring, and he just was clearly just a very, very good person. And I think coming from
I think that's the thing that really comes across. He is. And if you read his book, it just gets you optimistic about the future and everything around it. So that's been a fun thing. He has great optimism. He always feels like it's going to work out. And he says, and if it doesn't work out, it's going to make a great story.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I came from a very cutthroat industry. I was a commodity trader, physical mining, and it's very cutthroat. It's zero-sum game. And to come to Silicon Valley and listen to your father about, the public service that he did, and all the philanthropic work and helping other people, and he does all of that, and he can still win. And it was like, wow,
Well, here's the thing. If you're a trader and you think zero-sum game, then it kind of has to be cutthroat. But if you're a venture capitalist, you're thinking win-win and win-win-win. And everybody wins. So you make the deal and everybody's better off. So I think that's one of those, the nature of the beast. I just was funny that you say you're a trader. I was just trading some lesser tokens. I assume everything gravitates toward Bitcoin, so I just hold on to my Bitcoin or buy more. But I was trading some lesser tokens today, and I was thinking, yeah, this is really, it's fun and it's addicting. And when it's going down, you're going, oh God. And when it's going up, you're going, oh yeah, I knew it all along. It's very funny. It
teaches you. It teaches you a lot about your own emotions and psychology and everything that Warren Buffett sort of warns about, like trading crypto. I think a lot of people were never traders, but they got into to trading very quickly because of crypto, and because everything, the cycles are so fast. You can have 2 decades of experience of bull and bear runs and your emotions playing havoc in a space of 3 years, right? So I think it taught a lot of people about that.
I think so. I think it's actually what's really exciting about Bitcoin is it teaches how economics work and how currencies started as first it was like, okay, here's some shells and I'll trade you some shells for some fruit. And then it was some gold, and we can carry gold around and move it from place to place. And then it was the promise of gold. Then it was the promise of government support. And then it went through this trusted third party. And that all of that was kind of an interesting thing. But until Bitcoin showed up, nobody was really focused on how an economy works. And now I would think if you were a really good economics professor, you would be spending most of your class on Bitcoin, because you're showing how this has evolved over time. And each time there was a new currency that came along, there was an anthropological leap forward and everybody got wealthier. And so as a great economics professor, I think you would say, hey, let's learn how this works. And even if you don't have a good economics professor, I think most people in their 20s now really understand the economy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's definitely piqued people's interest, even from the debasing of the US dollar against the gold standard, and now people, what Trump's talking about with Bitcoin as a reserve currency. It piques people's attention because they want to know what's going on in the world, and it's very current now. So I have to ask you this, Tim, because it's lucky for me that it's a hot shot moment for you, right? You've come out with a new prediction, and I remember in 2018 you predicted a 250K Bitcoin by 2022. We didn't.
Yeah,
we didn't
and I'm
quite
sort
get
of
there.
wondering why anybody cares about my predictions after that one.
I'm interested to know
one right, because Bitcoin was $180, and I said 10,000 in 3 years, and it was $180 in 2014, and then in 2017 it hit 10,000 right on the nail. And then I got hubris and I thought, oh, I can predict anything. And then I thought, okay, Bitcoin 4 years, 250,000. And I was off.
But tell me, but you were off, but like a true risk taker, even though you're off, you've doubled down on your third prediction, which is $3 million by 2025. So just talk me through, your thinking.
That isn't mine.
Is it not?
No. Mine is, okay, I did say 120,000 by the end of this year, and definitely 250,000 by the end of next year. And then if you go out 5 to 10 years, the answer is infinity, because I think there's going to be a run on the dollar. And so, and I think it'll be I hope everyone has some Bitcoin by then. So it's not a tragic run on the dollar. I hope it's sort of a gradual one. But when I can buy my food, my clothing, my shelter, pay my taxes all in Bitcoin, I will have less reason to own any dollars. Why would I hold on to a fiat currency that can be printed by the whims of some government if I can hold on to something that generally appreciates in value? And if I'm a retailer, why would I accept something that's going to depreciate in value rather than something that will appreciate in value? And people think, oh, it's, kind of a wild prediction. But when I was about 10 years old, my dad gave me this $1 million bill. And I went, $1 million is the greatest thing ever. What can I do with this? And he said, nothing. And I said, what do you mean nothing? It's $1 million. And he said, it's $1 million Confederate dollars. The Confederates lost the war. The Union dollars became valuable, but the Confederate dollars became worthless, and they kept printing them and printing them and printing them, and it had huge inflation. And finally, the Confederate dollar was worthless. Currencies are worth what people will pay for them. And I think we're going to see that same kind of transition from where it went from the Confederate dollar to the Union dollar, or from the French franc to the euro, or from the whatever currency Cyprus had to and from the drachma to the euro, whatever. Nobody wants drachmas anymore. Nobody wants French francs anymore. I mean, interestingly, nobody used to want Argentinian pesos, but they got a great leader in there that's a free marketeer. But nobody wants Nigerian naira. When the retailers realize that they can get Bitcoin instead of getting dollars, at first they'll say, we accept Bitcoin. Eventually, they'll say, we only accept Bitcoin.
So the $3 million, you didn't predict
I never
state
said
a $3 million.
No, but
Well,
it'll blow through that
fake
number.
News.
It'll blow through that number on its way to infinity.
Well, Tim, you're obviously a big Bitcoin man, and just sort of moving across into to venture. I don't know if you watched the Mark Andreessen interview with Joe Rogan recently.
No, I would love to see that.
Yeah,
I think they're both brilliant. I'll bet that's a fantastic interview.
It's unbelievable. I'd highly recommend it. But one of the main points I just wanted to pick up on with you is that he spoke a lot about how the political climate, Democrats have adopted this interventionist, controlling philosophy around tech, AI, and crypto, and it's really hamstrung your industry over the last few years. And he's particularly excited now around the unshackling of that, and believes there's a golden era for technology. Sort of two-sided question for you. Have you experienced that resistance and that difficulty over the last few years in those areas? And do you agree that we are now moving into a more golden era?
Yes, I'm incredibly hopeful about what President Trump and Elon Musk are attempting to do, because we were getting more and more hamstrung over time. Every time we'd try to do something innovative, there would be a lawyer saying, no, you can't do that. And then all of those little laws started to pile up so that people stopped wanting to innovate. And here in California, the regulations are even tougher. And I kind of have this theory that for every government job they cut, we're going to create 3 new private sector jobs. And for every regulation they roll back, every line of every regulation will probably create 1 private sector job. And for every department they eliminate, I think it'll create about 100,000 jobs. And if they were able to eliminate the SEC, that would create 1 million jobs. Those regulatory bodies, while they had really good purposes when they got started, have become overbearing. And the idea that I see all these amazing startups and they're trying all these new things, and then they say, but we got to geofence the US. Every time I hear that, my heart just falls just a little bit, because I think, oh my God, the US, we used to be the innovative capital of the world. And now we're the regulatory capital of the world. And all the other countries of the world tend to follow us, but they are not following us now. Their populations get to experience the newest technologies, and ours does not. Plenty of examples. You can't do an airdrop here. You can do an airdrop in almost every other country in the world. You can't do, there's so many things.
Sorry, airdrop, for example, a drone dropping a parcel, so last mile delivery, for example.
Oh, no, I'm talking about an airdrop of a currency, of a cryptocurrency.
Okay.
So if you want to airdrop a cryptocurrency into the US, you cannot do that. It's considered promoting your currency. The SEC calls cryptocurrencies in general securities, and that is a violation. There are so many other things that we can't do. I mean, ultimately, I do want to be able to raise a fund all in Bitcoin, invest it all in Bitcoin, have the entrepreneurs pay their employees and suppliers all in Bitcoin, and have the whole thing, all the taxes, everything paid automatically through the blockchain. And when that moment comes, that will save auditing, accounting, bookkeeping, transfer agents, tax lawyers, so much. It'll save so much money, and it'll keep so much friction away from our economy that it'll create many, many more jobs, and it'll make the world much more frictionless. And that generally creates more more economic value for people. I think we're at one of these critical times, and I've always felt that Elon Musk was a gift from the gods. The guy's extraordinary. He's working on fixing this planet, and he's working on getting us to another planet just in case. He's working on brain computer interfaces. He's making sure that Twitter allows free speech. And since he's already taken Twitter and made it a better service with 20% of the employees that it had before, I believe if anybody can do this with government and make government more efficient and run with fewer people, I think that's Elon Musk. So I think that has opened up a possibility, and I kind of have great hope for the new administration in their approach. I'm more of a free trader than nationalistic, and so that part I'm not crazy about, but the rest of it I am a big fan.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to your use case for crypto on a venture capital fund. I mean, I love those like real world utilities. You know, you could just see it with multiple different smart contracts, doing the distributions, doing the corporate governance, international investors. It would just be so efficient and cuts out a lot of the overhead, etc. Makes it, one has to charge less fees, etc. And you could just see it happening. And I think it's just a question of when. And Elon, I love the analogy or the example of Twitter. And if he can do that at Twitter, can he do it at the government, and just the crazy savings that could happen and start running a country more like a business? I mean, it really is exciting to see how it all pans out. And particularly, I'm sure that it's going to unleash Silicon Valley again and empower a lot of what you guys are doing.
Yes, I hope it does. I think there's going to be a lag, because first they'll make whatever changes they're going to make, and then people have to adjust to it and believe it. And then they can start, imagining a great future again. Because I think a lot of the things I come up with, and I think, oh, wow, this would be really great for the world. I think, oh, no, it's got this or that regulatory body that's standing in the way of that progress.
I mean, I don't know if you heard Trump make this comment. It wasn't widely publicized, but talking to the polarization in the US and the sort of teetering of like civil society, he made a comment about success brings people together, and he's seen it happen before. And I think he genuinely believes that, like, if he can implement the policies that will gear the US towards success, he thinks it will bring people together. And I just thought that was pretty interesting. And I would imagine he's right to an extent.
Yeah, I think I'm one of the people that saw this election from both sides of it. And I do understand both sides of it. And I think success does bring people together, but it does it in a different way. I've noticed that when my funds are doing badly, that people distance themselves from me. And when they're doing really, really well, they gravitate and they gravitate toward me. I think that's also true. Like, how many people feel like they had a hand in the success of Tesla or SpaceX? And I think that if the U.S. starts to turn around, if we start to see incredible growth, which we could, I would not be surprised if, what right now our economy grows at about the same rate as inflation, about 2%. Although inflation's gone up, but 2% is about what we can expect. I actually think if it really started to turn, there's no reason that our economy couldn't grow at 8%. And that just requires unleashing the business community. And then if that happens, then everybody's going to have a job. And not only that, but it will it will bring jobs to people all over the world. And the other thing is that if the U.S. regulates, everybody else regulates. And if the U.S. deregulates, everybody else deregulates. I've noticed that all the way. I do a lot of traveling. And I've noticed that when the U.S. started to do all this, make it tougher to travel to the U.S., the other countries made it tougher to travel to their country. and it was just, tit for tat. Hey, if you guys are going to do this, I'm going to do this. And every time we had a new form we had to fill out at customs, every time we had a new, new form or whatever, or regulation we had to comply with for an investment overseas, those other countries would just add that same regulation or that same form, and it made it very hard for people to operate. And when it's just one thing or two things, it's no big deal. But when it starts really piling up, then it really does have a very bad negative impact on economic growth. So fewer regulations, better innovation.
Understood. And Tim, on the traveling side, you've always been well known for going to China, going to India, looking global. Sequoia's been in the news quite a lot recently around, because of the geopolitics, breaking up their one business into three businesses, separating China, India, and the US. How are you thinking about venture on a global scale, considering what's going on with geopolitics at the moment, and considering that you are someone that is always, or has traditionally, looked to these, other regions?
Well, I think President Xi is a weak leader for China, and he's put so many constraints on those people. They are really struggling, and their economy is going flatline. And so it's very unlikely that I would put any more money into China. India, on the other hand, is opening up. Interestingly, we have a TV show called Meet the Drapers, and India, the biggest audience for us is from India. And we just did. I just spent 3 weeks there, and we filmed an entire season of Meet the Drapers in India.
Wow. I didn't know that.
And so there are some really good, I noticed some really good entrepreneurs coming out of India. They had a big boom and a bit of a bust where people were investing at crazy valuations into Indian companies for a while. And then they cooled off. And now I'm just seeing really good innovators coming out of India, reasonable valuations, and maybe good opportunities. And I actually think if the U.S. deregulates, that India will also deregulate. And I think everybody's going to be much better off. It's a strong democracy. They've put the kibosh on a lot of the corruption. By the way, regulation kind of builds corruption. So every time you add a new regulation, it gives the temptation to a bureaucrat to become corrupt. And so if you clear out the regulations, it turns out you get rid of corruption too. The other perception I have from India is that there's a great service orientation, a great love for the customer. They say the foreigners are gods, so that they kind of have this feeling like, okay, we really want to serve the foreigners, do what we can for them. But it has created this amazing customer bias among the Indian population, and they become natural entrepreneurs. And it's a really nice, it has a really nice feel to it. And I think that country could grow at an extraordinary rate. I think it could grow faster than China did during its boom times. So I'm quite excited about what's going on there. Other countries and regions, I've noticed more freedom coming out of Latin America. whether it's Malay in Argentina or La Calle uh, in Uruguay or Bukele in Costa Rica, or in El Salvador, or the Paraguay guy. They're creating a movement that is freedom and capitalism and away from socialism. I know that Sebastian Piñera in Chile was a great capitalist and really encouraged capitalism in his country too. I think some interesting things are happening down there that are freeing up that society, and we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurial activity down there. So that's another promising area. I'm hoping that the deregulation that I'm hoping happens in the U.S. starts to emigrate to Europe, because I do feel like the Europeans have been hamstrung. They're allowed to innovate and think and whatever, but whenever they start to commercialize something, they've got a regulatory body right on their back. Makes their life much more miserable. So I think I'm hoping that the U.S. will set the deregulation in motion, and that domino effect will come to Europe. I'm not optimistic about Russia. I'm not optimistic about China. But
what about Africa?
Well, Africa, a lot of it's about trust. If you have a leader, and there are some in Africa that are honest and doing the right thing for their people and leading democracies and that kind of thing, and those countries will do really well, because of course Africa's growing super fast, the population's growing very fast. But if you're in a country where if you build something of great value and they take it away from you by force because they want it, there's no incentive to create anything of value. And I think that's been the story in most of the African countries. I know that's, I know they're trying to overcome that in Nigeria. And if they do, that would lead the way for all of Africa to open up and become more trustworthy, more free. And those are the two things that really matter. Well, a very clear rule of law and real trust throughout the system, and real freedom throughout the system. Trust your people, set them free is the message I have for all the leaders of the world. And a very clear rule of law that everyone abides by, even the leader. That makes a big difference. And then great things could happen in Africa. I mean, they're going to have, what was it? They're going to have 4 billion people in Africa in 2050.
Yeah, it's huge. The population growth is huge, particularly across that Sahel region. And I'm personally quite optimistic, particularly with the internet being accessible to most people, and AI, education, the youth, that generation coming through. I don't necessarily think that the governments are going to change overnight. We're going to see democracy everywhere, but I think that education and access to knowledge will help give it traction and hold more people accountable and be less susceptible to sort of brainwashing and influence. So I think I'm sort of optimistic from that perspective.
Oh yeah, I think it'll make it. I mean, there's great innovation happening in Africa, lots of places. Most of it's Me Too, but still a lot of innovation. And they have to innovate. We have a company we invested in called Pagatech from Nigeria, and they have had to sort of reinvent finance in Africa, and they basically create trust. They have people in little remote areas throughout Nigeria that collect money, and then they go and they pay everybody's cable bill and their internet bill and because if people pay those themselves, they have to wait in line for like 48 hours in order to pay the bank their cable bill. Anyway, so Pagatech is taking a really, they're taking all the new things that could be happening out there in fintech, but then they're applying it to an African continent that is way behind. The good thing about Africa, Latin America, India, is that they can leapfrog existing technology, where the way China leapfrogged the US because they didn't have to lay landlines because they could all use smartphones. India or Latin America can leapfrog the banking system by using Bitcoin. Africa can leapfrog the current transportation system by delivering goods with drones, having all autonomous cars in new cities that they create. So that leapfrogging can happen with some really innovative governments and some entrepreneurial people. So I'm looking forward to it. I think some great things are going to happen all over the planet. And I hope that we are opening the logjam here in the U.S.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting times. Tim, I just want to change track quickly and talk about your book, which I've reread, The Startup Hero by Tim Draper. What I'm doing, Tim, is a lot about personal and professional development. And as I said at the beginning of the conversation, having reread your book and being immersed in your world and your father, I was just amazed at how much of it is around life philosophies, wisdom, even spirituality at times. I mean, I circled one of the quotes in your book by the Buddha. It says, to enjoy good health, to bring true happiness to one's family, to bring peace to all, one must first discipline and control one's own mind. If a man can control his mind, he can find the way to enlightenment, and all wisdom and virtue will naturally come to him. So there's a lot of holistic knowledge and wisdom in your world, and that doesn't just happen on its own. And so I'm curious, where did all this start? Where did it rub off on you? Did you do a lot of soul searching and deep diving and reading across different subjects? And do you still continue to? Can you just tell me a bit about that?
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned reading. I read the Bible, the Koran, the Book of Mormon, the whatever. I read all this science fiction, these unusual books that are around I read all the utopian novels. I read anything that seemed to be sort of fundamental to how our society was built. I tended to read those things, and they were the ones that captivated me. I, read fewer things like mysteries or romance novels or the entertainment kind of reading. I was always reading for sort of the purpose of understanding humans and how we got to where we're going. Kind of always had sort of an anthropological force in me. I always flash back to the cave people. How were they thinking about this? And how did we advance? And why did we get to where we are? What decisions did we make?
And that's had a big impact on your business career as well, has it? I mean, to what degree has all of that knowledge and wisdom impacted what you're doing?
Well, it's an understanding of people and how they think. And then I try to guide people with Draper University, with our show Meet the Drapers, with our startup houses around the world, and even with my investments. I make judgment calls. And when I wrote the book, I wrote it around what I had taught and learned by creating Draper University of Heroes. I came up with a pledge, and each chapter in that book, until the last piece, is really based on a line of the pledge. And each line is sort of, hey, these are things that you can think about that can kind of guide you if you come to a fork in the road and you're making a tough decision. It's like, hey, make a short-term sacrifice for the long-term success. Or you come up against something and you say, I'm having a difficult time with this, but it's going to take a lot for me to encourage people to do the right thing. That's where I say promote freedom at all costs. I say fail and fail again until you succeed. And that really, we use the word fail instead of try and try again. And we use that because we want people to feel comfortable failing and failing again until they succeed. And then we say explore the world with gusto and enthusiasm. And we say, have, fairness, openness, health, and fun with all that we encounter, mostly fun. And the fun part and the gusto and enthusiasm part are really important parts of human existence, life. And all the greatest companies in the world were started around fun. They all had pivots, so they failed once, moved in another direction. They were all really encouraging more freedom. So most of my pledge really does guide people toward success.
I mean, it's interesting that you made the connection between Hero University, because I was just going to come on to that anyway, but kind of in the same theme, I was going to follow on by, I suppose, sharing my experience, not necessarily in software and tech. I've had a lot of failures, Tim, over my career, either that I've started or I've been involved with other leadership. And what I've noticed is that so often it hasn't been because of the product or the market. It's because of corporate governance, not doing things properly, partners falling out, lack of integrity, maybe not even believing in oneself and making the move, or listening too much to conventional wisdom and not being clear about who to listen to and who not to listen to. And I'm just interested to know, in your wealth of experience, how do you think about that? And, how many of these startups and businesses that you've been involved with have actually, failed because of those sort of reasons rather than business reasons, product market fit, etc.?
Yeah, I love this question because I remember it very well myself going through. When I was getting going, I didn't really know who to trust. And I knew to trust my father, my mother. I didn't know which of my friends to trust because they had different axes to grind. And my parents' friends, I didn't know which ones to trust. And those were the people that I looked to for advice, friends of my parents and my parents. Well, something I learned was when people are young and they're coming out of school, they're not always giving you the straight scoop. And it's something that's bothered me for a while, and I'm starting to realize why it happens. Some of it is just natural competition, and if I give you bad advice, I'll send you off in the wrong direction, and you go. Then I can rise higher because you went lower. But a lot of that is because the way education works today is that we're only going to give out 3 A's, and then there'll be B's and C's and D's and F's. And so learning is not straightforward, and learning from your peers is not always straightforward either. And so at Draper University, we focus on team learning, because that's what the way the world works anyway. It's all based on teams. You work on teams. And what that does is it makes it so that you have a team and you're working together to get everybody to understand what they're doing. and it works really well, and it gets people to trust each other, and you learn, and they learn much faster, and they teach each other much faster. I remember, a situation in college where I really didn't understand organic chemistry, and I was getting close to the final, and I got some guy who knew everything about organic chemistry, to tell me everything he knew. And we went back and forth, and I was asking all these questions and going really deep. And then we took the test, and the next day the guy goes, "Well, so how'd you do?" Because he was feeling very proud of himself by teaching me everything. And I said, "I got an A-." And he looks at me and he goes, I said, "What happened?" He said, "I got a B+." And I thought, that was not fair. It was not fair that I got an A-, he got a B+. He taught me everything I knew about organic chemistry. And somehow we didn't both benefit from that teacher learning experience. It's wrong-headed. Schools have screwed up. They've created people. They encourage Schadenfreude. They encourage people. They think that if I cut this guy down, I go higher. Instead of, hey, let's teach each other how this thing works. Let's learn together and let's work as a team, and different teams, and just get used to sharing information with each other and sharing it fairly. Now, as people get older, they know that they're not in competition with everybody they see. And they've been working in teams for a long time. And usually their judgment is better and their advice is more honest. So I hope that helps you.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, ironically, just before this call, Tim, your son Adam's Boost VC memo came through his blog, and it was all about how to short academia. It was all about
that's right.
This subject. So
well, academia has. I mean, they're living on their laurels. I don't know if you've read this article about Princeton, but I think they've got an endowment of $43 billion. And as a nonprofit, that means they have to give away about $2.2 billion a year. And it only costs about $500 million to run Princeton. So they don't care what their alumni think of them. They don't care maybe they do deep down, but they don't care what their students think of them. They don't have to perform. Their endowment is going to keep Princeton alive forever.
That's interesting.
It just keeps growing.
They're not held accountable.
There's no accountability except maybe the endowment, I guess, is held accountable to its performance in the stock market. So that is one example of many where education has really been resting on its laurels. The idea that if you're lucky today, you get an old algebra book from 30 years ago, because if you're learning it now, it's not as precise and it's a little bit more fuzzy. That to me means that our education system has basically gone down over all that time. So I think the teachers' unions, the bosses of the teachers' union, have always been looking out for the teachers, but there really isn't, and the politicians, and there really isn't anybody fighting for the quality of the education for the child, the student. That's a flaw, it's a real flaw in our system, which could be broken by just saying, hey, it doesn't make any sense for a government employee to unionize. It's like, here's the money, you figure out what your own salary is, and you take whatever you want, and you make the rules, and that's the way it is. You really have a problem there with K-12 education, at least in the state of California. Fortunately, there are 50 states, and there's a lot of competition out there. But California, New York, and Illinois have really failed all under the leadership of the teacher union bosses. And there should be an equally powerful group trying to make education better for students.
Well, I think you're doing a huge amount of work with your hero university, Tim, and we could have a whole podcast talking just about that. But just to give some of the audience an insight, you flip the script on education. Instead of teaching history, you teach your students science fiction, for example. And I always remember you said, Charley, you should read Dune. Read the book Dune. That'll give you an insight into the future and what's going to happen. And I bought the book. and I just couldn't get into it. So when the movie came out, that I watched that, and so I could see what you were talking about. And there's a line in your
Actually,
book, Tim.
Dune, you have to get through page 60. Once you're through page 60, all of a sudden the thing opens up and it becomes this whole new world, and your life, everything changes. And there are 30-something Dune novels, so you can really get into
Jesus.
it.
Well, yeah, there's
one
a lot
that's
of different
easier
concepts
to get into is Foundation. Isaac Asimov's Foundation. It's a good one to get into. Anyway, yeah, science fiction. Read comic books.
You mentioned. So Frank Herbert said in his classic science fiction epic Dune, "Fear is the mind killer. Pessimists are fearful. Fear has destroyed many businesses." And one of the questions I've been dying to ask you over these years, because you wrote in my book, Charley, anything is possible. That was the message you wrote in my book. I don't know if you can see that. Charley, anything is possible. And one of the things that I suffered from over the years is I was high confidence and low self-worth. So high confidence, never really believed in myself and made the move and thought I had to go and work for somebody else, etc. And this whole idea about belief and confidence and, I suppose, insecurity and self-worth, there can be two sides of the same coin, right? It can and fear, it can prevent people taking actions and taking lead. But at the same time, I think we all know a lot of entrepreneurs who are deeply insecure, and that's what drives them for their success, because they only feel that they're going to be good enough if they can succeed. I'm just interested, how much do you think about that? How much do you talk about that? Is that something that, is front and center in people's minds, understanding their own, inner drivers at the university?
Well, we do talk about making decisions based on opportunity rather than fear. Fear decisions really do not work well in business. They discourage progress. They discourage innovation. They stop people from acting. Instead, they freeze. And if you really want to kill a business, just freeze. If you want to make a business successful, make tons of decisions, whether they're going to be good or not. Just keep going. Move forward. If you want to run a great business, you have to just keep fighting. You can't run. And you have to be in there. You have to keep going. You have to keep building that confidence and keep moving forward. With the first day of Draper University, we're all gathered around the pool, and I'm in my suit. We've all had this long walk, and we're all tired or whatever. And I'm saying, okay, well, when you're starting a business, what do you have to do? People say, I got to have a customer, you got to have a product, you got to think about your market, you got to have an assembly line. And I said, yeah, all those are things are very important, but basically you have to take the first step. And so then I step into the pool and we all dive in.
I love
freezing cold water and having that willingness to take a step with the great unknown is probably as important as anything in starting, building, growing a business.
So, Tim, in your book, you had your bucket list with a lot of stuff that you've achieved and you haven't achieved. A big bucket list, and 3 of the buckets were fulfillment, feat, and fortune. And I've got 3 questions that you hadn't ticked yet back in 2018 when you published the book. So I'm interested to know where you are with these 3. So in the fulfilled bucket,
this will be fun. I'll have to figure this out. Great.
So in the fulfilled bucket, you were going to free a prisoner. Have you freed a prisoner yet?
Yes, I have.
Wow.
Yes, there was a prisoner locked up in El Salvador. He got sucked into a gang, and I was able to get him out. He was not a part of that gang. He just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And some friends of ours alerted me to it, and I was able to talk to their government, and he got freed. Wow. I've got 3 or 4 other people I'd like to see freed very soon, and they're all entrepreneurs.
Wow.
I'd like to see Elizabeth Holmes freed. I'd like to see Silk Road, Ross Ulbricht freed. I'd like CZ, if he's still in jail. I think he's out. I think Pavel should be freed of all the, the trouble that they've given him. People who are being locked up for being great entrepreneurs and trying extraordinary things and trying to make our world a better place should not be locked up.
Very interesting. Well, I mean, that's a really, it
Okay,
was for
so
the
I
next
have
edition
Freed
of
the
your
Prisoner.
book.
What's next? What's next?
Next is Under Your Feet bucket, Walk on the Moon. How's that going?
I've said to myself, 83 years old, that's when I go up on the moon. And it'll be like when those lines cross, it's a little safer and my life is getting closer to the end.
Okay, so that's in the pipeline.
Hopefully still be healthy then.
That's in the pipeline.
Okay. What's the third one?
Third one is Fortune. Have you made an investment in Mongolia yet?
I did. I invested in a Mongolian venture fund, and they're doing some great things. And it's amazing what a turnaround Mongolian has been since they created free markets and capitalism. It's a whole different place. It was so bad under Russian rule and socialism. It was so bad. And now it's capitalistic and great place to put some money. And yeah, I made that investment. So 2 out of 3. Not bad.
There you go. There you go.
Got a ways to go.
Tim, thank you so much for doing this. I'm just going to end off on asking you 2 things to wrap up. First of all, any insight into a non-obvious sector that you're interested in over the next decade in terms of sector, investment, tech, etc. And if anyone's interested in getting more involved in Tim Draper's world, your funds, your university, where can they find you as well?
Well, I'm Tim Draper on Twitter and Timothy Draper on LinkedIn. And if you have an entrepreneurial venture and you have a deck, feel free to send it to me, tim@draper.vc. Otherwise, don't send me. I don't want to be bombed with emails. The sectors I've been looking at that maybe other people aren't. I recently had to have a kidney removed, and so I'm looking for companies that are growing kidneys and not just kidneys, but other body parts. So I've gotten into all sorts of stem cell technologies that I've really studied hard and some cloning technologies. And some great advances are happening there. And that's kind of interesting. It's a different field for me. I hardly even took biology when I was in high school. And so it wasn't really a strength of mine. I love what is happening in space. I think space and transportation, there was a log jam and that was broken by Elon, and everything from, mining asteroids for metals or mining the moon for oxygen. So many things, interesting things happening in space. Also in medicine, healthcare is all going digital. We're getting not only diagnostics that are better than any doctor could produce based on all the data that people have about themselves, but also the therapeutics and how individualistic the therapeutics can be. And that's going to be a long process, and it's going to be one that pharma fights every step of the way. But I believe that digitally we'll be able to diagnose and give the right therapy to every individual and do a better job of it than the medical system is giving us, big pharma is giving us today. I think, though, the cryptocurrency world is gravitating toward Bitcoin. I'm seeing more and more entrepreneurs and engineers and software designers all gravitate toward Bitcoin, where they want to put the smart contracts there. They want to make it easy for retailers. They want to make better wallets. They want to make it easier to invest fiat to crypto. All of that's now happening on the Bitcoin blockchain, where a lot of experimentation happened on other lesser blockchains. And so I see that. That's another area that I'm spending a lot of time on. And then the category we call other. That's the good one. That's the exciting one. That's where no one has gone before. And so we're always looking for those.
Well, Tim,
so
thank you for sharing.
Charley. Thanks for having me on your show. I hope everybody comes to hear it. And I know you're doing great things with this podcast.
Well, thank you, Tim. It's been a great conversation. You didn't disappoint. It's been a real variety of topics, and I'm just incredibly grateful. You taught me the power of human connection and asking, and you reciprocated. So I'm very grateful, and hopefully we'll keep in touch. Send my best to your father in particular, and wish you all the best with this golden era of technology investing.
Yeah, it looks like a good one coming. Thanks, Charley.
Thank you very much, Tim. If you enjoyed the episode, please share the love and give us a cheeky follow, rating, like, or review. It really does make a massive difference. Don't be shy either to share any of your favorites on social media. This is a truly mission-driven project with the aim of helping to motivate, inspire, and give hope to as many people as possible that change, a better life, a new dawn is all possible. I genuinely love hearing from you and actively try to constantly improve things and bring guests on to address any specific themes. As always, you'll find resources and links from the episode in the show notes. You can follow me on all social media platforms as well as YouTube. And don't forget to check out my website, charleylaw.com. Until next time.